Coward series, social anxiety is the topic. Stop letting that negative inner voice bully you and keep you in fear and keep you isolated and trapped and lonely and stuck in your flat. So if you're new to my YouTube channel, my name's Jonathan and I'm a confidence coach for men. I've been coaching for almost 11 years. I love coaching despite it being very challenging. And if you know my story, I suffered with terrible social anxiety as well. In my early to mid 20s, I was so afraid that I didn't want to leave my house. I was afraid to make eye contact in case people saw me awkward. I was afraid to speak to people in case I started stuttering or freezing up. I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed because I got bullied growing up. I got bullied at school. I got bullied around my local area. And the bullying and the torment and the shaming created voices in my head. And I didn't know how to deal with those voices. And those voices would say, you're not good enough to get a girlfriend. You don't deserve to make money. You don't deserve to be confident. You don't deserve to be happy. And if you try and go after these things, we're going to punish you. We're going to shame you. We're going to harm you. We're going to kill you. We're going to make people not like you. We're going to put you in harm's way. And all this fear came from the emotions and the anxieties that bullies triggered in me when they were threatening me, when they were criticizing me, when they were making fun of me for wearing cheaper trainers, when I couldn't afford to go on school trips because we didn't have the money, even though my parents worked really hard. So they completely humiliated me. When a bully pushed my head through a window and nearly killed me, I had to go to hospital and have stitches. He did it for no reason. He did it because he was evil at the time. So this put tremendous amounts of fear in me, and it affected every aspect of my life. It affected my self-worth with women, with people. I didn't think I deserved to be loved. I didn't think I deserved to be respected and treated well, despite growing up in a loving family and obviously having lovely people growing up. But the problem of human nature is we tend, and I definitely did, we focus on the negative. We don't focus on the positive school teachers that said, you're really good, you're great, you've got a lot of ability. We focus on the negative school teachers that said, we'll never amount to nothing when we leave school. We're lazy, we're not focused, we're the dumb one, we're the stupid one. We take those conversations in at a very young age, and we don't realize that those conversations become demons. They are haunting us in our adult life. They're keeping us awake at night. They're stopping us from living our dreams. They are facilitating and entertaining any negative opinion or criticism that a friend has, that even a family member has. It starts to feed that negative dark voice. And that's the voice of social anxiety that says, stay at home, don't start the business, don't ask that woman out, don't go to that event, don't travel, don't go to a new restaurant, don't take a day trip because you're going to be humiliated. You're going to be found out for what you really are, which is a loser, which is someone that's not good enough, which is someone that has the identity of a shameful person. All these voices are the voices of the enemy. They're lies, they're not true. And when I started to really, I always prayed to God. I had my own relationship with God as a young boy. I always found confession to be so powerful, what I'm doing now, to have the courage to voice and speak on your deepest and darkest insecurities and fears. And that gives you tremendous confidence. That gives you your self-respect back. It overrides the opinions and the limitations of other people. So I was so afraid of confrontation, psychological, emotional, physical, because I experienced it in my childhood and it terrified me. Being bullied wasn't the worst part. It was going home feeling ashamed, and it was the voices that the shame created. Dark, lonely, sickening, saddening depressions. Sitting in my bedroom, afraid to tell my mum and dad that I was terrified of living, terrified of dying, and terrified to remain the way I was. I didn't know how to get out of it. I was in a mental and emotional prison because I'd been bullied, I'd been traumatized, I'd been abused, and I didn't know how to get out. And I felt ashamed. I felt embarrassed to even go to God and ask God for help because I felt like it was my fault at the time. And that's what bullying can do if you don't stand up to it. So the voices from the bullies paralyzed me with social anxiety, took away all my natural God-given talents and abilities. I had a great personality when I was young. I was kind, I was caring, I was open, I was fearless, until the bullies got hold of me and damaged me and put a lot of fear and shame, and that's what they get offered at the time. They enjoy that. They love, silence in you, because when you're silent, you can't build relationships. When you're silent, you can't make money. When you're silent, you can't overcome the fears that they've put in you and take their power away, because it makes them feel good. Bullies bully because they're weak, because deep down they're insecure. They just hide it very well. And they prey on people that are good, that are kind, that are empathetic, because they know that they can blackmail you, trick you, manipulate you, and abuse you. So I started to understand these things as I got older, and it's a contradiction, because at a certain point my self-esteem was so low. I felt like the most insecure human being on the planet. But another part of me always knew that I had confidence. It always knew that I could override the opinions of other people, and I could live the life that I wanted to live, and I could be the man that I wanted to be and continue to be kind. Because that's what bullying can do. Bullying can interrupt the loving, positive relationships that you've got in your life and start to make you question yourself and your narrative. They can turn you into the way that they are. And then you don't trust anyone, and then it's hard to love other people, it's hard to open up. And that's the whole reason why we're here, to love, to trust, build relationships, and enjoy our life. That's certainly a big part of it. But when the bullying narrative gets in your head, you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt yourself in every single way. You start to doubt even if you get out of bed, leave the house and buy a pint of milk from the corner shop on the council estate, because you're so afraid of stuttering, or looking the shopkeeper in the eye, or dropping the money, or dropping food on the floor and everyone laughing at you. So you're so afraid of making mistakes. You become a perfectionist in a negative way. You're afraid to be yourself. You can't be normal. You can't express yourself. You can't put your hand up in class and answer one of the questions or solve an equation because you're embarrassed of your own voice. You're scared to walk down the street because the anxiety is changing the way that you walk, it's changing the way that you talk, it's changing the way that you feel, it's changing the clothes that you wear. It gets into you, it affects everything in your life. And that's where I was years ago. I was absolutely paralyzed, terrified to my boots with anxiety and shame and paranoia. I didn't trust anyone. I only trusted my nan, my mum, my dad, a couple of friends. But other than that, it was a lonely world to live in. I was afraid. I was afraid to create new opportunities. I was afraid to go on the school trip to France when I was younger. I was afraid to go to Ireland when my friend invited me with his family, because I was so afraid of reliving, of re-experiencing those negative experiences that the bullies had put me through. I hated those emotions of conflict, of danger, that my life was at risk, at threat, that I was going to be looked down upon by everybody, by the whole of society. Those fears made me crippled with anxiety and terrifying panic attacks every day during my 20s. So I got to a point in my life where I started to think about taking my own life, and that didn't make me feel good. That made me feel ungrateful to God. That made me feel terrible that I could consider putting my family through that. But I was so afraid. I was afraid of the pain. I was afraid of more pain, more fear, more bullying, more laughing. Being made to feel terrible for growing up poor, being made to feel terrible for having learning difficulties, being made to feel terrible for the way that I was. So all these fears just made me live as a coward. I was living as a coward. A guy around my neighborhood one day, he said, "Jonathan's a coward, that guy's a coward, he always runs." And it hurt at the time because what he said was true. I started to run from the bullies, and it made me feel so ashamed of who I was, because I couldn't find the courage at that particular time to stand my ground, stand up to evil and fight back. I couldn't find it. The fear got the better of me, the adrenaline, the anxiety. My biology beat me into submission and made me fly, made me take off, made me run away, and then have to go home and live with the consequences of my actions, the consequences of not just feeling, but living as a coward, living in shame, living in pain, living in defeat, living in poverty, living in a small opinion of myself. So I had to go to those dark places, those places of abandonment, those places of shame, of pain, of self-disgust, of feeling unattractive, of feeling awful. I had to go to all those places. And it got to a point where I was begging God for help. I asked God, please help me, please don't leave me like this. I'm terrified. And my prayers were answered in my early 20s whilst living in a small bedroom shared accommodation in Fulham Broadway, and a dirty sink and a shared toilet. And I stumbled upon a man called Les Brown, who was a motivational speaker. A friend of mine had a book, and he said, you should read this book. And at the time I was ignorant, I was defensive, I wasn't interested. But something in me at home told me to go on my cheap phone. I had a little bit of internet access at the time, just enough credit on the phone to access YouTube. I clicked on Les Brown, and as soon as I heard his story, I stopped. My whole attention was just gripped on what he was saying. And the words that he said and the story that he shared of his life made me cry, because he said, I was labelled the dumb one growing up at school. I was labelled eligibly mentally retarded, and the kid said, he's the dumb twin. He's the dumb one, that's Les. And that got my attention because I was called the dumb one at school. I was labelled stupid. I was labelled with learning difficulties by school teachers that weren't qualified to be putting labels on me. But I was called all those things, so I could relate to Les Brown, and I trusted him because he had a kind voice. He had a kind, genuine voice, same kind of sincerity that my nan had, and I loved my nan, and I trusted my nan. Was the kindest person to me that I've ever met. So I could feel that Les was sincere, because at the time I didn't trust anyone, didn't trust businessmen, didn't trust anyone pretty much, apart from a small couple of people in my family and friends, as I said. And when he went on to say, you will fail your way to success, that broke me out of shame, because my whole life I was terrified of failing. I thought that successful, confident people who didn't have all my issues, they didn't fail. They just succeeded at everything that they'd done. They passed their exams, they made money, they got the love of their life, they traveled. They didn't have the challenges that I was dealing with my whole life. It was a full-time job hiding these issues and anxieties from people, which is why most days I dare not leave my house. I stayed in my flat. I put myself in a lockdown way before the actual lockdown came. I was living in isolation, privately, suffering, day in, day out, eating snacks and chocolates and sugary donuts and watching films to numb the pain, being addicted to porn to suppress the pain and try and find some version of love, a counterfeit, being addicted to prostitutes and escorts in my 20s because I was so afraid of asking a woman out in case she said no and rejected me, and I had to go home with those feelings that the bullies brought up in school. So when I heard Les Brown's story, that he come from a background of poverty, that he was labelled dumb at school, that he was adopted at birth, but he turned his life around. When people said you're not qualified, you don't have a degree in business, and he went on to inspire millions of people, and he inspired me. And he said, you probably won't believe this hearing this, but you've got greatness in you. You've got the talents, you've got abilities to change thousands of people's lives. And it made me cry, because I knew deep down I could do it. But 85% of me was saying, you're not good enough. Who do you think you are? You're ashamed. There was a lot of laughter in my head, heckling, dark laughter from the bullies that had implanted and possessed me with these fears and insecurities and these addictive, anxious, paranoid thoughts. So when Les started to continue his story, and he said, you know, you've got to take action, you've got to be hungry, you know, and he made me laugh. He said, if you land on your back, make sure you can look up, because if you can look up, you can get up. He said, it's hard. He said, it's tough when you're around negative, toxic, energy draining people that are telling you that you're not good enough. And when you're living in a culture and a society that is designed to ruin your sense of self and kill your dreams. And then he went on to say, imagine being on your deathbed with all the ghosts and the dreams coming to you and saying, we come to you, and only you could have given us life, and now we must die forever with you. It made me cry. It absolutely made me cry my eyes out. But I wasn't crying because I was weak. I was crying because I found the truth, or I experienced a change in me. I made a commitment that day that I'm never ever going to live my life in fear. I'm not going to live my life under the opinions of other people. I don't care what people say. They can hate me, they can threaten to kill me, they can despise me. I refuse. I've got nothing to lose, everything to gain. And I'm not going to lower myself to their level. I'm not going to be full of hate. I'm not going to bully other people. I'm not going to be nasty. I'm going to be the best version, but I'm going to develop some boundaries. And Les Brown said, you've got to go out and you've got to take massive action on all your fears. So that's what I did. I faced my fear. I went down to the boxing gym as a 20-year-old. I was nervous, I was shaking, I was stuttering, but I got in the gym. I took up amateur boxing. That gave me confidence, and it taught me how to learn self-defense, so the bullies couldn't physically bully me around my area anymore. All the bullying stopped. People sense when you're confident. They sense when you're a good person, you're a God-fearing man, but you're not going to take crap from anyone. They stop bullying you. They stop looking at you in a sort of condescending, manipulative way. It stopped. Then I went out, I started facing my fears of dating, because I was terrified of being rejected by women. Because when I was younger, there were quite a few girls that said I was handsome and found me attractive, but I didn't believe them. They were telling the truth. My mum used to say it, my aunties, my nan. But I had this voice in my head that said, you're disgusting, you're ugly, you're horrible. People just saying that to make you feel good. So I was paranoid. I didn't trust love. I didn't trust any positive statements, even from anyone. Because bullies said I was ugly, or there was a couple of girls and guys that laughed at me, and I believed the negative. And it was Les Brown said that if you don't reprogram your mind will take over. And if you don't go after what you want in life, you're automatically going to get what you don't want. And I didn't want this life anymore. I remember saying to my mum, I don't want to live anymore. Mum was like, what do you mean? I said, I can't live this life anymore. I can't do this no more. I'm not being myself. I'm living in fear. I'm trying to please everyone. It's making me sick. I'm getting diarrhea, I'm getting panic. My body's telling me my life ain't right. I'm not living right. And I could feel this is not what God's called me to do. God gave me a voice to speak. God gave me a voice to inspire people, to change their lives, to help them in every area of their life. And if I don't speak on what God's given me to do, I've wasted my life. I've allowed bullies, I've allowed evil to win, and I'm not going to let that happen. I didn't spend all those hours watching Batman, Superman, all these great movies of heroes that faced their fear and felt the fear and did it anyway. I didn't spend all those hours for nothing, wasting my time. I could not let the bullies win. I could not let evil win. My values as a Christian taught me that without having to have any teacher tell me, and some intellectual coward who's never stepped into the arena and who's not fulfilled in their own life. Teachers shouldn't be putting kids down. They shouldn't be judging kids in a harsh way. They should have boundaries, absolutely, but they should be loving and kind. And obviously there were teachers that were like that, but like I said, my mind, the demons, the insecurities would always gravitate towards what the negative teacher said to me over the positive one. So hearing Les Brown's story helped me to clear up the confusion of my own story, of my own doubt, my own paranoia. And as Les Brown said, you got to be hungry. And I was so hungry to succeed. I had to prove these bullies wrong. I had to put the evil into good. I had to change as well, because I wasn't perfect, although I was a good person. A lot of anger in me, a lot of distrust, a lot of paranoia, a lot of jealousy, a lot of insecurity. I had to address those issues. And Les Brown said, you will do that through the process of setting goals, living from your values, getting around OQP, only quality people, no negative crabs in a bucket. No narcissistic people that are going to bring you down, that are going to attack you, that are going to put words of defeat over you. You can't be around people like that. So for a while I was lonely because I didn't have any friends, but I soon found good people, positive people who encouraged me, and I encouraged them. I found mentors. I found Les Brown. It changed my life. I went out, I started doing public speaking. I started going to groups, I started learning. I opened myself up to learn. I humbled myself as a beginner. I put my pride aside, I took advice from smart men and smart women, and I started to grow as a person, and my anxiety started to reduce and my confidence started to increase. And I got to a stage, I remember a friend saying at the time, I was in a group of friends, in the end, they weren't real friends, they got jealous when I was successful, but one of them said a truth, and he said, wow, he said, you've changed, you don't care what people think anymore, you're really living your life. I appreciated his compliment, so he noticed it. He noticed that I wasn't living anymore for the opinions of others, which I was doing for the first part of my whole life, and it was destroying me. And I knew that when Les Brown said all these things, I knew that I had a passion to speak, I had a passion to teach, but to get to this point, I had to face my fears. The fear of being attacked, the fear of being criticized, of not being liked. Once I become successful, I didn't care anymore. I was so happy. I was so happy in myself, and I got a girlfriend, I made money, I got out of depression, the panic attacks stopped, I moved out of my parents, moved in with my girlfriend, built a successful business, and I changed a couple of thousands, a couple of million lives around the world. And that's why I attract amazing clients from all around the world. My dream as a kid was to go to America, to have an American friend, to meet someone that has an American accent. That was my dream watching the films growing up. as someone growing up in England, as English and Irish descent. And I never imagined in my wildest dreams I would be coaching people from America in central London, in England. And then I'd be coaching people from Germany, from all around the world, from Europe, from Asia, and traveling the whole world through my videos, and people traveling from all around the world. My mentor Jeff said a great thing. He said, when you're congruent and you've got the courage to be honest and you face the fear, people will travel across the globe to shake the hand of congruency. And congruency doesn't mean you're perfect, but it means that you're living a life of truth. You're living your purpose, and you're being vulnerable, and you help people travel around the world for anyone, for anybody. And that's what happened to me. So I overcame the bullying. And obviously it takes time. It takes time. And eventually my faith, my family, my values, and just changing helped me to let go and forgive the bullies, and they don't exist anymore. And the voices have been cleared up. So I started to use the voices of the bullies as motivation, as fuel to move forward and take action. And as Les Brown said, you've got to be hungry, you've got to be relentless, you've got to keep going. And he's right. Every word he said was scripture. It was right. He said, you will fail your way to success. Everything that I tried, guys and girls, I didn't get it right straight away. I didn't get a girlfriend straight away. I didn't make money. I didn't build a successful YouTube channel. I wasn't socially relaxed. I stumbled, I stuttered, I failed. I got embarrassed, I got ashamed, but I got back up. I got back up like Tyson Fury in the first Deontay Wilder fight, and I kept fighting and I got to success. Anyone can do it. Anybody can be successful at overcoming social anxiety and living their best life and being the best person that they want to be. But you cannot be silenced. You cannot be silenced by fear, by the voices of trauma, by the voices of the bullies, or that one school teacher that said you'll never amount to nothing, because it's not true. But it will only be untrue until proven otherwise. And you have to do that by getting in the arena. You can't sit on your backside and just read books and become an intellectual coward and just quote stuff. It doesn't work. It's good to read. It's very good to read to educate yourself. But in this area, we're talking about confidence, building real relationships. Books is not going to do it. Books don't give you fight or flight adrenaline. Books don't teach you how to handle fear in the arena. Only being in the arena teaches you that. And Les spoke on all these things. A lot of these things my father taught me growing up. My dad mentored me in so many different ways, in amazing values. But you know, when you're young sometimes, you don't always want to listen to your parents because of pride being young. So you listen to someone else that you don't have a close relationship with, that is successful, that you can feel that they've lived it. And that's why I'm always grateful to Les, because who knows what would have happened. And that my prayers were answered when I was praying to God, please help me. Why are you not hearing my prayers? He came through. It's helped me many times. So my faith got stronger, my courage got stronger, my social skills got better, my resilience improved. So I could handle rejection now where before I couldn't handle it. And I started to realize that a lot of people think rejection is going for a job and not getting it, or going for that relationship, telling someone you love them and they say they don't feel the same way, or starting the business and going for the sale and not getting it. That's not rejection as far as in my experience. That's success. You know what rejection is? Rejection's doing nothing. Rejection's living on what if. What if I start a business, it doesn't make any money? Or what if I start a YouTube channel and everybody trolls me and I get no followers and no views? That would be embarrassing. What if? That's failure. You make yourself fail by doing nothing. You let the bullies win. We've all been bullied. We've all been bullied. If we haven't been bullied by someone at school, someone in our family, our own voices. So my biggest fear, when I really got to the end of the truth, I used to think I'm afraid of people. No, that wasn't the main fear. I was afraid of the voice in my head that other people would trigger, and I would hear the threats and the shaming and the blaming and the confusion and the paranoia. So I learned that those voices are not us. Those voices weren't me. They're not me. They're just conditioned voices and voices. I don't know everything about everything, but I know enough to know that they're not ours. But we can use those voices to make better choices in our life and create the life that we want. And it's possible. It's possible that a council estate kid can live his dreams, make money, change the world, help a lot of people, fall in love, lose weight, get confident, get on stage, speak, inspire, educate. It's possible because I've done it. I've done it successfully. I've done it over and over again, and I've taught others to do it. And there's so many people doing it. But if you listen to the negative and you let fear win, you're going to believe it's not possible, therefore you won't take action, and your reality will be based on what you believe and the action that you don't take. Most people are addicted to not taking action, which is why I say the first part of my teaching before we get to all the complicated, amazing bits is got to leave the house. Got to leave the house and be grateful. You've got to practice gratitude. So it was standing up to these things, and I didn't realize how strong I was. I never knew how strong I was until I faced the fear and got right in the heart of the dragon. I never knew that, because I would sit on the sidelines at home overthinking, worrying about what would happen. This scenario plays out. What if they do that? What if they say that? What if I experience that? That's fear. That's overthinking. Most of it doesn't exist. And most of it, if it come true, I always handled it. I was a lot stronger than I thought. Everyone is stronger than they think they are. But most people never get to that point because they never challenge themselves. They never take that first step. So it's not just about social anxiety. It was about everything in this. This was an educational experience. I learned more from facing my fears than I did going to school. Unfortunately, they didn't teach us in the school system. They didn't teach you how to overcome fears. But maybe they've changed it now, but they didn't when I was back at school. But I will be grateful. There were some nice teachers at school, as I said. But yeah, I was able to forgive the bullies that bullied me. Later on, even meet some of them and reconcile and have friendship. And, you know, just a nice feeling because people change. I understand that now. The bullies were in pain. They were going through their own issues and they were taking it out on me because of having, you know, they might not have had the parents, or they've been abused, they've been bullied. So yeah, I wanted to put an end to it. I didn't want to stay in hate and anger. So part of becoming successful, not just for myself, but helping others, was part of the process of healing and letting go of the anger and the hatred that I used to carry towards bullies that had hated me and humiliated me and put me down. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have achieved what I've achieved. So a lot of people, as I said, if it's not the hater and the critic in your own head, which it always is, you fear what someone else will say. And for as long as you fear what someone else will say, they'll always have control over your life. You'll always be under the dominion of how they want you to be rather than how God made you to be. So great, it was an amazing learning lesson for me. And the actual teaching, the actual practicalities of what I had to do was this. It come down to one practice, and that's action, speaking, communicating, taking action, going to the boxing gym. It's all simple, obvious things that we all know. We all know it, but most of us are afraid to apply it because it takes guts, it takes courage to step into the arena. Everybody can sit on the sidelines and judge and criticize and project their baggage, their trauma, their narcissism, their ego onto those that are living a positive life. But very few can take responsibility, look at themselves, which I did, and say, yeah, I've got all these issues, but I want to be a better person. I want to be more honest. I want to fix these issues. I want to address them. You can't ask for better than that. That's the character of a champion. You know, this is what the great men and women have done throughout all of our history. So when the teachers said I weren't smart, they were wrong. When negative friends says I can't make money because I'm not educated or because of my class, they were wrong. When the friends said you can't build a business because you haven't got the marketing, you haven't got the branding, you haven't got the backing, you haven't got investors, he was wrong. Because I have confidence, I have courage, I have heart, I follow my values, and I did it. So you have to be careful about who you listen to. Most people listen to people that are not qualified to be giving them advice. And I realised that when Les Brown's story and his talk hit me like a ton of bricks and awakened me out of the pit.